What if I told you that all that tiptoeing you do on the ice, all that whispering and careful movement, is the very thing scaring the fish away? It sounds crazy, I know. For our entire lives, we've been taught to be silent assassins on the ice. Today we're going to challenge that. We're exploring a wild theory that in the dead of winter, fish aren't afraid of noise. They're terrified of complete and utter silence. Stick with me, and I promise you'll look at a quiet, frozen lake in a whole new way. By the end of this video, you might just understand why you see fish on your flasher that just refuse to bite. Do you think I'm out of my mind? Let me know in the comments right now, but do me a favor and hear me out first. For generations, the gospel of ice fishing has been passed down from father to son, from old-timer to newcomer, and the first commandment has always been, "Thou shalt be quiet." We've all heard it. Don't stomp your feet. Don't slam the truck door. Don't drop your scoop. The logic seems sound, right? Sound travels incredibly well through water and ice, so any loud noise is like a dinner bell for nothing, because all the fish have already fled to the next county. This belief is so ingrained in us that we spend our days on the ice, moving like we're in a library, shushing our buddies and cursing ourselves for every little sound. But what if this sacred rule, this foundation of our winter fishing strategy, is not just wrong? What if it's backward? Let's start by respecting the old ways. The idea of being quiet isn't born from nothing. Imagine your grandpa out on the ice, telling you to hush because you'll spook the perch. He was teaching you to be mindful of your environment, to be a hunter. And there is a kernel of truth to it. Nobody is saying you should fire a shotgun next to your hole. The fear of making noise comes from a basic understanding of a predator-prey relationship. A sudden, loud noise often means danger, and a fish's first instinct is survival. So for years, we've taken this to the extreme, believing that our very presence, our footsteps, our existence on the ice is a constant threat we must minimize at all costs. It's a logical conclusion, but it's based on an incomplete picture of the world beneath our feet. The science we've always leaned on is simple physics. Sound travels about 4.5 times faster in water than in air. The ice itself acts as a giant drum, transmitting vibrations directly into the water column. So when you drop a heavy tool, that sharp crack travels quickly and efficiently to the fish below. It's an abrupt, high-frequency sound that doesn't mimic anything natural. It's an alarm bell. This is the part the old-timers got absolutely right. A fish's world is all about vibration, and a sudden, sharp shockwave is a universal signal for danger, get out of here. This is why we've become so obsessed with stealth. We've focused entirely on this one type of sound, and in doing so, we've completely ignored all the others. Our obsession with silence has even spawned a whole category of fishing gear. We buy foam pads to kneel on to silence our footsteps. We get sleds with quiet skis. We carefully place our augers down as if they were made of glass. We've built our entire approach around the idea of becoming ghosts on the ice. Think about a typical morning. You drill your holes, making an unavoidable racket, and then you enforce total silence. You sit there, motionless, waiting for the world to calm down. You're waiting for the fish to forget you're there. We treat the underwater world like a sleeping baby that we've just disturbed. But what if it was never asleep in the first place? What if that initial noise was a conversation starter, and our silence afterward is what ends it? So let's be perfectly clear before we go any further. Yes, some noises are definitely bad for fishing. Dropping your metal spud bar right next to your hole is a terrible idea. That sharp metallic clang is a shock wave that will absolutely send a school of crappies scattering. The same goes for slamming a shack door shut or dropping a full propane tank. These are what we can call impact noises. They are sudden, loud, and unnatural. They break the rhythm of the underwater world. So the advice to avoid these specific actions is 100% correct. The mistake we've made is lumping all sounds into this one bad category. We've assumed that if a loud clang is bad, then a quiet footstep must be less bad, and total silence must be the best of all. This is where the logic breaks down. Now, let's introduce the core of this whole idea. Think about something called the ambient baseline of sound. No natural environment is ever truly silent. Right now, wherever you are, there's a hum. The refrigerator, the traffic outside, the wind. Your brain tunes it out, but it's there. This is the normal. The same is true for the world under the ice. It is not a silent, dead vacuum. There is a constant, subtle symphony of sounds happening all the time. Our mistake as anglers has been to assume that our job is to eliminate all sound, when we should be trying to understand and blend in with the existing sounds of the lake. We've been trying to create an unnatural void instead of becoming part of the natural noise. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're a deer standing in the middle of a forest. You hear the wind in the trees, birds chirping, a squirrel chattering in the distance. These sounds are normal. They mean everything is safe. But what happens if all of a sudden every single one of those sounds stops? The birds go silent, the squirrels stop chattering, the forest goes completely, unnaturally still. What does that signal to the deer? It signals one thing and one thing only: a predator is nearby. The most dangerous sound in the forest is not a snapping twig, it's the complete absence of sound. That's when every animal freezes because it knows something is wrong. That deafening silence is the real alarm bell. Now let's apply that same logic to the lake. The world under the ice has its own version of that forest soundscape. You have the constant groaning and cracking of the ice itself as it expands and contracts. You have the gentle movement of water currents under the surface. You have the sound of other aquatic life, from tiny invertebrates to other fish swimming around. These things create a low-frequency hum, a baseline of vibration and sound that is always present. To the fish that live there, this is the sound of normalcy. This is the sound of safety. It's the background music of their entire existence. It's what tells them that everything is okay. It's the furthest thing from a threat. Our big mistake is that we, as land creatures, project our own sensory experience onto the fish, and we stand on a vast, quiet, snow-covered lake and perceive it as a place of absolute silence. So we try to match that silence, but we're not experiencing the world from the fish's perspective. We're not feeling the pressure changes, the subtle vibrations traveling through the water. We are interpreting the absence of airborne noise as total silence, but for the fish, the world is still humming along. The problem begins when our presence creates a bubble of that unnatural silence around our fishing spot. By being perfectly still and quiet, we are creating the one thing that nature equates with imminent danger. To really get this, we need to stop thinking like a human and start thinking like a fish. A fish's primary tool for sensing its immediate environment is not its eyes or its ears, but its lateral line. This is an incredible sensory organ. It's a series of pores running along the side of the fish's body that detect subtle movements, pressure changes, and vibrations in the water. It's how a fish can feel a predator approaching from behind, or locate a struggling minnow in murky water. They don't just hear the world, they feel it in 3D. It's like having skin that works like sonar. This system is tuned to detect changes from the norm, from that ambient baseline we talked about. So, how does the lateral line interpret different sounds? A sharp, sudden vibration like that dropped spud bar is a jolt to the system. It's a clear, localized signal of danger, but a rhythmic, low-frequency vibration is a different story. Think about the sound of an ATV or a snowmobile driving 100 yards away. To us, it's loud, but to the fish, it's a non-threatening, predictable vibration that travels through the ice. It becomes part of the ambient baseline. It's just information. The same goes for the rhythmic scraping of a shovel clearing a spot, or the steady drone of an auger drilling a hole a little ways off. These are not sharp shocks. They are consistent, predictable pressures that fish can easily identify as non-threatening. Here is the turning point of this whole idea. What does that highly tuned lateral line feel when you, the angler, create an area of absolute silence? It feels a void. It feels a dead spot in the water. All the normal ambient vibrations it expects to feel are suddenly gone, absorbed by your presence and lack of movement. Imagine you're a perch swimming along, feeling the normal hum of the lake. As you approach a certain area, that hum just disappears. It's like walking into a soundproof room. It is completely unnatural. What could cause such a thing? The only logical conclusion for that fish is that a very large predator, something big enough to displace the water and absorb all vibration, is sitting perfectly still, waiting to ambush. Our attempt at stealth has made us sound like the biggest, scariest thing in the lake. This theory perfectly explains a very common experience that most ice anglers have probably dismissed as a coincidence. Let's call it the first drop phenomenon. You drive out, you pick your spot, and you fire up the auger. You drill 1, 2, maybe 3 holes, making a huge amount of noise. You quickly scoop the slush, rig up your rod, and drop your jig down that very first hole. And bam, you get a bite almost immediately. You think to yourself, wow, I must have drilled right on his head. The old wisdom says this fish was just dumb, that it didn't have time to get scared away by the noise of the auger. But what if the opposite is true? What if the noise didn't scare it, but actually attracted it? Think about it from the perspective of a predator like a walleye, a pike, or a big jumbo perch. Their entire life is a search for easy meals. What does the loud, vibrating, bottom-disturbing sound of an auger signal to them? It signals a major disturbance. It sounds like something big is happening. This disturbance could be kicking up invertebrates from the bottom. It could be disorienting or injuring smaller bait fish. For a predator, a big disturbance isn't a threat. It's a dinner bell. It's an opportunity. So they don't flee from the sound of the auger. They are drawn to it. They come to investigate the commotion, looking for an easy meal. Your lure, being the first thing to drop into that zone, becomes the target. We've seen this play out time and time again. How often has your best bite of the day been in the first 5 minutes after you set up? And then as you settle in and everything gets quiet, the bite dies off completely. We've always chalked this up to the fish wising up or moving on. But maybe it's because the initial attraction, the noise, has disappeared. Once the commotion stops and is replaced by that dead, silent void, the curious predators that came to investigate get nervous. The signal that drew them in is gone, replaced by a signal of danger. So they hang back, sit on the edge, or leave the area altogether. They are the fish you see on your flasher that just won't commit. They're interested, but they're also spooked by the silence. Here's another real-world example many of you have probably witnessed. You have 2 anglers fishing relatively close to each other. Angler 1 is a statue. He's sitting on his bucket, perfectly still, staring at his rod tip, not moving a muscle. He is the picture of stealth. Angler 2 is more active. He's shuffling his feet to stay warm, occasionally scraping some slush out of his hole, maybe tapping his jig on the bottom more aggressively. He's not being obnoxious, just active. According to traditional wisdom, Angler 1 should be outfishing him 10-1, but how often do we see the opposite happen? The active angler, the one making a little bit of consistent noise, is the one pulling fish out of the hole while Mr. Statue gets nothing. The reason is that Angler 2, the active fisherman, is creating a constant, low-level, predictable set of vibrations. He is establishing a new, ambient baseline in his immediate area. The fish get used to his presence. His movements are part of the scenery. To a nearby perch, it's just, oh, that's that rhythmic thump from above again. No big deal. Meanwhile, Angler 1, the silent fisherman, has created that dreaded cone of silence. Any fish that approaches his area feels that unnatural dead zone and immediately becomes wary. It's a classic case of our intentions having the opposite effect. We think we're being stealthy, but we're actually screaming danger in a language we didn't know we were speaking. So, what is the practical takeaway from all of this? The goal is not to go out on the ice and start a heavy metal band. It's not about being as loud as possible. That's just as bad as being too quiet. The key is to understand the difference between good noise and bad noise. It's about learning to control the vibrations you send into the water and using them to your advantage. It requires a complete shift in mindset from how can I be silent to how can I create the right kind of sound. It's about moving from a passive approach of avoidance to an active approach of engagement with the fish's sensory world. Let's define our terms. As we've discussed, the bad noise is almost always sharp, sudden, and high frequency. It's the metallic clang of dropped pliers. It's the loud crack of a heavy object hitting the ice. These are shock waves. They are the equivalent of a flashbang grenade going off in the fish's world. And there is no natural equivalent to these sounds, so they are universally interpreted as a threat. These are the sounds you should continue to avoid. The old wisdom is absolutely correct on this point, so don't get careless with your heavy gear. Place things down, don't drop them. This part of the stealthy approach is still very valid. Now for the good noise. Good noise is rhythmic, consistent, and generally low frequency. Think of the steady hum of a generator or a running vehicle a little ways off. Think of the rhythmic shuffling of your boots on the ice as you try to stay warm. Think of the scraping sound of your scoop clearing slush from the hole. Even talking in a normal voice, which primarily travels through the air, has a negligible negative impact. These sounds create a presence. They establish that ambient baseline we keep talking about. They tell the fish something is here, but it's predictable and non-threatening. They can actually mask your smaller, unintentional bad noises, blending them into the overall soundscape. So, here is the new strategy. Here is what I want you to try on your next trip out. After you drill your holes, do not immediately go into stealth mode. Instead, maintain a low level of normal activity. Don't be afraid to shuffle your feet every few minutes. When you clear your hole of slush, do it deliberately. Don't sit like a stone for 30 minutes. If the bite is slow, purposefully tap the butt of your fishing rod on the ice a few times in a steady rhythm. You are not trying to scare the fish. You are trying to create a subtle, consistent vibration that tells them you are there, but that you are not a threat. You are replacing the terrifying sound of silence with the reassuring sound of normal activity. See if it doesn't turn those lookers on your flasher into biters. So there you have it. The big idea that might just change the way you fish on hard water forever. For years we've operated under the assumption that less is more when it comes to noise. We've done everything we can to erase our presence from the ice. But the big what est pavarot moment, the real turning point, is realizing that in the fish's world, a complete lack of sound is the loudest, most terrifying alarm bell of all. We haven't been acting like hunters. We've been accidentally mimicking the behavior of a massive, silent ambush predator, and then wondering why the fish are nervous. And this completely reframes our approach. It means the commotion of setting up might actually be a form of chumming with sound. It means that staying active and creating a consistent low-level presence could be the key to keeping fish interested and comfortable. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this deep dive. If this gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss more tips that go against the grain. Now I have to ask you, what's the one rule of fishing you've always followed that you're now starting to question? Let's get a conversation going in the comments below.